Ladies and gentlemen, it's 10 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Notice the meeting was properly posted on Thursday, January 5th, 2017. We have item number 3, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on December 13th, 2016.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion is, hang on real quick. Randy Graw is, my understanding is you're on the agenda for budget board on Thursday.
Oh, I am.
To be added to this group, is my understanding. Right now, you're not a voting member yet because the budget board hasn't voted yet, but I would encourage you to participate in the process as much as possible. We just can't have a vote from you.
Fair enough.
This particular meeting.
But motions and seconds are okay?
No.
I'll second.
Sorry, I was going to mention that.
No, I'm fine.
And
I saw my name on the list, so I'll second.
Fair enough. Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
No, we need you to participate. See, this is where you get to have your cake and eat it too. You can say your piece and not have an official vote.
Accountability.
All right, item number 3 passes. Item number 4, discussion and possible action to place on the BET watch list the jail mold remediation project for a total of $136,154.25. This consists of a contractor fee of $131,550 and a state contract admin fee of $4,604.25. We've got, I believe, the county engineer here that can discuss this item if anybody has any particular questions.
This is just specifically for the basement, correct?
Yes, at this point, kitchen.
Is this a one-time charge?
No, afraid not. Pass this around so that you're better.
What do you think the total would be after the totally remediated?
Well, it's a stepwise process, Steve. We've got to remediate mold that's in the jail that you see in these pictures.
That's all I know.
Well, no share.
I've already seen it, I've lived there, I know you can have it.
It's
How do you say that word?
Tachyboride, tachybotrys. Tachybotrys is how you pronounce that. It is the
Worst kind, right?
toxic, yes, it's the medical of them all. So we've got to get a handle on it. But what keeps the moisture out of that kitchen so it doesn't come back is the air handling equipment in the kitchen, which is currently not working. So it will come back over and over again until we get the mechanical equipment fixed, which is another item on your agenda. And then there's evidence that it's already escaped into some other floors of the jail. So time is of the essence because this is only going to get worse and cost more money. So it's a circular thing. We're going to a good place to start. We really need to start with the first cleanup. I anticipate there'll be a second cleanup in the kitchen area of a lesser amount than this. Then there'll be a cleanup in the upper floors. There'll be the mechanical equipment. And all this time, he's going to have a temporary kitchen elsewhere that's cost you some money. So when it's all said and done, it's going to be north of $500,000, maybe a little south of $1 million to resolve this problem.
This is an issue that the infrastructure committee has been watching for some time. They have vetted the situation, made a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for the jail mold remediation project. It is on state contract, hence the state contract admin fee. The Board of County Commissioners has accepted that recommendation. There's just no funding source. So that's where we come into play with this particular agenda.
This isn't the first time we've had to deal with this. Flooding issues.
This isn't a flooding issue, though.
But there was moisture that caused this to happen.
Well, it's in the
This is
kitchen.
more of an aerial moisture issue that gets in the air from when they're cooking. It's always damp
Let me put it
down
this way,
there.
this is more than once we've had to deal with a problem with the kitchen at the jail, correct?
The last problem we had was a sewer problem.
Right.
The sewer collapsed. We had to put in a mechanical system so we get sewage in. It was gray water. It was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I move the item.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to place on the BET watch list, $136,154.25 for the jail mold remediation project. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Right.
Yeah, can we also castigate the former legislator for having the unfunded mandates for us to have to pay a fee to do something to our jail?
I think that would be under citizen participation. Board comments.
Let me go back.
Okay, we will be sure and get that item on the watch list. All right, item number 5, discussion and possible action to place on the BET watch list the mechanical system for the jail basement with costs estimated at $500,000. Once again, the engineer's office is here to answer any questions. This goes part and parcel with the mold remediation.
Motion to add to the BET watch list.
We've got a motion to add $500,000 to the BET watch list for the mechanical system in the jail basement.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Is this part of the 500,000 to $1 million, or is this a separate item?
This is the same.
This is the same pot of money? Okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, just for clarification, we've got a motion and a second. Let's have a vote.
Aye.
Do we have a discussion?
I'm
Do we
sorry.
have discussion first?
If you would like to have a
Yeah,
discussion.
we would. Are there any other funds that are available to pay this? Or are we just, there's no other option from the sheriff's office?
No.
Well, I was gonna bring it up, I don't mind placing it on the watch list, but Public Building Authority, PBA, I mean, this is a building issue, has that gone before across PBA?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
What I'd like to comment about that is, we have 2 million square feet of building in this organization. About 900,000 of those is in the PBA. Those PBA buildings are in your bond funds, that are cash generating buildings. You have 1.1 million square feet of general fund buildings that, it should be considered by the general fund.
The
Not that
PBA reserve is,
can't.
how much is in the PBA reserve? It's over 4 million, correct?
I don't know the number, kind of keeps up with that. I think they're doing well right now. There are some risks that are coming that I see. We can discuss it if you want to or not, and then I know they're looking at maybe purchasing another building. Well, I know they actually got me looking at one, so.
Which, and Christie brings up a good point. I do think there is, on the balance sheet, a hefty sum, and I don't know exactly what that dollar amount is, but to me, that's kind of, as we're looking at funding sources, our general fund reserve is more kind of like the checking account, if you will, that we can utilize throughout the year whenever we have issues come up. And PBA, in my mind, is more kind of as a savings account whenever we get towards that end of the year, if our projections for employee benefits or whatever is off and we need something at that last second, we can dip into our savings account to go in there and get that. But I do understand, where you're coming from on the PBA. Because there's funds on paper there.
Yeah, and it's the same with our office. We're in favor of funding these. We just want to look for a different funding source other than general fund reserve. We know that there's money in PBA, so we'd rather look at PBA to fund these 2 items.
And traditionally, I think that PBA has done capital expenditures, while general fund has funded recurring expenditures. And I know there's people on the budget board that feel pretty strongly about, or on the PBA, sorry, that feel pretty strongly about them using those for capital expenditures and not recurring expenses.
I just know with the rest of the agenda, once we place whatever one wants to place on here, we're gonna get close to our reserve balance. It's not happening.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to add $500,000 to the BET watch list for the mechanical system for the jail basement. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. We will get that item on the BET watch list. Item number 6, discussion and possible action to recommend to the Oklahoma County Budget Board to fund the jail mold remediation project from general fund reserve dollars in the amount of $136,154.25.
Move the item.
Got a motion on the table. Is there any discussion?
Stacy, is this something that we need to move on fairly quickly?
Yeah,
Oh, well, as far as the
Sure we do.
the remediation of the mold
I'm not knocking the
before.
project.
And that's
for the
step
timing
one,
at all.
remediation of the mold, we've got to get started, and I really need to get going. I know that there's money in the PBA reserve that you can debate and so forth, but I think if commissioners wanted to come out there, we'd already done it. I wouldn't be here in front of you waiting for the holidays for this meeting. If we could get this and get started, maybe the other funds could pay the balance as we go or something. There's so many issues that's going to be coming at you over the years in our buildings as they age and deteriorate. I think all funds are going to have to be part of the solution. You just always can't kick it to one fund or the other.
I'm gonna
My 2 cents.
second Steve's motion, because I see the remediation is an M&O expense. And I think that I would agree with Danny and Christie on the one we're about to address on maybe look at alternative sources, but I think we need the ball rolling sooner rather than later on the remediation portion. So I'll go ahead and second.
Before we have a vote, is there any further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to recommend the Oklahoma County Budget Board to fund the jail mold remediation project from general fund reserve dollars in the amount of $136,154.25. All in favor? Aye.
No. Again, it's because of the funding source. We want to look for different funding source other than general fund reserve.
I was an aye.
I was an aye.
Okay,
Based on
let's do a roll
the
call. Roll call.
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Steve?
No.
No. Larry?
No.
Amy?
Aye.
Aye. So I'm an aye. 5-2.
I would echo, we feel like capital stuff should look to PDA first before coming here, unless we have a lot of money. But like I said, we're about to get up to our reserve balance. But we'll get the ball rolling and start it.
Yeah, and that's where, when we're looking at, going forward, we had some discussion last year about capital projects, actually having a budget for capital and stuff. That's, if we had something in place, we could be looking along those lines instead of.
And I agree with Christie and Danny. We need to start doing something on this. It's getting to a situation that it's going to be bad. It's already bad. And as far as funding sources, maybe later down the road, we can look at alternate funding sources.
All right, moving on to item number 7. Discussion and possible action to revise the DET watch list by increasing the transfer of $1 million for the Employee Benefit Fund 4010 from General Reserve Fund to a total of $2 million. This was requested by Mr. Lambert.
And it's something we discussed last month, that if the item was not on the agenda to do that. So just a quick recap. I don't have handouts, but if you look at the big screen, this is the report that I handed you guys last week. This is updated with current data for our medical and prescription claims. To date, comparing 16-17 to 15-16, we've paid out through January 18th $2.8 million more in medical and prescription claims in the same time last year. That's a 28.4% increase. We budgeted for an increase of 3.3% or $590,000, so the difference there is $2.2 million. That's where the $2 million figure comes from. It's a little bit higher than it actually was last month, but I think if we put this item on the watch list, kind of monitor it as we go forward. What we don't know is there's some stop-loss reimbursements pending. I talked to John Wilkerson this morning. We've got about $400,000 that we know of. We just don't know the timing of when we will receive that. That is not factored into this number here. So for now, let's put it on the watch list. We're not asking for the funds yet. Probably come back next month and start talking about moving some money, some of that $2 million over to Employee Benefits Fund. But hopefully we'll know more by next month as far as the stop-loss reimbursement.
So right now, our actual utilization and trend, we're looking at 1.7. Is that correct?
Yep.
When you net out the first week's claims that were actually from last fiscal year?
Correct. Which is the bottom portion.
Okay.
And last year, the second half of the year was about $1 million less than the first half, so we're hoping that trend continues this year.
Any further discussion? All right, is there a motion?
I make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to increase the BET watch list for employee benefits from $1 million to $2 million. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Item number 8, discussion and possible recommendation to the budget board to transfer from general fund reserve $99.95 to sheriff's general $5,100 in the amount of $1.65 million from operations to salary and benefits. This amount is the remainder of the loss of revenue from not renewing the Department of Corrections contract.
I'm going to pass two different handouts out. One, the BET form, and the second is a breakdown of the budget for this year that also includes the revenue projections for the operation of the fiscal year. One of the things that members of this committee have asked for, as well as members of the budget board, is that the sheriff's office work to operate within their revenues of the fiscal year for yearly operations. As you all recall, back when we did the budget process back in March, April, and May, this body made a recommendation to the budget board to fully fund the DOC loss of revenue from the contracted inmates. And that was the recommendation by this body. And then at the discussions of the budget, it was discussed that they would give us the first portion of it July 1st, and then the remaining 1.6 would be handled in September. And now we sit in January, and we still haven't addressed the remaining loss of DOC revenue. What you're going to see on the sheet that's actually the budget is there's three main areas of the budget that we have tried to build out. We have core services, detention, and law enforcement. And those are our expenses. The projections are inclusive of all three. The ability to go through and project out each individual one of those would have been overly complicated for you all to understand. So just because of the vast amount of numbers that would have been on the page. And so I've gone through, we've had 6 months of expenditure so far, as well as 6 months of revenue. And so I've gone through and I've projected out salaries, benefits, travel, M&O, and capital across all of our funds that deal with those three categories. When we first built it and revised it in the beginning of the second quarter of the fiscal year, we were looking at $4.6 million. Upon going through December and assessing expenses and knowing what we have to expect moving forward, around the $45.6 million is what we're currently projecting, and didn't add any buffer to that. That's what my honest recommendation on projections would be. As it sits today, that's our general fund amount, service fee, and special revenue. We're projecting $3.6 million essentially in service fee, and then $6.1 in special revenue. So that special revenue amount is significantly lower than what it has been in years past, specific to DOC contract and DOC backup inmates. And so what we're asking, and as you'll see, is kind of what we're projecting the shortfall in revenue to match our operating expenses is 1.58, which is less than the 1.65 that we were short on the DOC contract loss. So I'll be more than happy to answer questions, but over the last few years, as you all have requested it, I have made the steps to bring the sheriff's office into operating on our revenues on a fiscal year basis, rather than operating on revenues with expenses that exceed what was coming in. And so that's something we have been working on. The 1.65 was something that the budget for this entire fiscal year was based on. since it was recommended by the VET initially, and then at budget board was said it would be fulfilled at the September meeting. And so that's what we have built on, that's what our revenues are based on. And if we were not to receive the 165, that would just put us even farther back of the goal that we have, as the goal that you all have, of the sheriff's office operating on revenues for the fiscal year. And we have no control over that DOC contract as well.
And if you did not receive the 1.65, you would be forced to cut expenses in certain areas?
Predominantly personnel costs. Most of our M&O and capital expenses are what's needed. We've streamlined those already. 2 or 3 years ago, our operating budget for the sheriff's office was just over $48 million. Today, we're looking at 45.6 is what I'm projecting for the year.
Okay.
So that's almost a $3 million reduction. We're trying to be cognizant of our staffing levels as well, but we're to the point where we have to know what the next 6 months brings for decisions we have on staffing levels and things of that nature.
I'm sorry, you're projecting 45.6. How much have you spent through the end of December?
I didn't.
Half of that, or?
Roughly half of that. And now, and granted, you have the encumbrances and expenditures, and some of those have been encumbered for the entire year, so I took some of those into consideration and had to kind of go line by line on some of those. I made sure I did my due diligence on the projection so it'd be as accurate as I think it would be.
John, off the top of my head, I don't remember the numbers. Some of the discussion at the budget board for the July 1 appropriations for the year, there was a separation of detention center monies from other, and I know you've got the whole pot to worry about, but on the sheet, it shows that you're projecting $33,394 for detention center for the year.
Well, those were, when I broke this out, that was what the initial was. So so adding all this together within 46.2. So I got that there. And then this isn't inclusive of all of these combined. I didn't separate out projections for each single column individually. I just did the totality of all three.
So you're not projecting, the 33.4 basically, you're not projecting that as what your actual detention
We'll be very close to that. I don't have the exact projections. I looked at the big picture because of the way that everything's had to be funded this year. We're funding it all detention out of general fund.
Right.
And then 1.6 would go towards the detention side as well.
That was my question. Of that 33.4, what did the budget board set aside for detention at the beginning of the fiscal year? Danny, do you remember the number?
Well, their general fund budget is $34.2 million.
Okay. 34.2. And that was intended to go to detention?
They had some overage, but
Yeah, they had identified 31.7 million of that for detention, and then the overage of 2.4 million to cover other expenses.
But they included things in the detention number that the budget board put together that our office never put together. Those numbers were never put together by us. Those were put together by someone outside our office and presented to the budget board. So, but they included things in there that additional funding was not given for, such as 20 additional DOs and a 3% raise for the DOs. So I want to make that clear as well.
Yeah, these are really difficult, hard issues, and I mean, there's a lot of, I think that we have to do due diligence, and it's just, they're hard questions to ask, and it's, we have to ask those questions in our office all the time as well. I mean, how do we cut expenses, if we've got technology issues that we need to take advantage of, and it's, I don't take any pleasure in having to ask you those questions.
You're the new
That's all I'm
Rick.
trying to tell you.
But John, according to your projections on the detention center, you think you've got enough funding, is that correct?
That number was what we initially budgeted at. The projection shows reductions across all three categories. I can't tell you what was, I did not break it out by court, detention, law enforcement on the projection part. The projection is the totality of all three together for the fiscal year. That was added multiple new lines to this spreadsheet, was made a lot bigger. I tried to make it as simple as possible for you all. But the bottom line is, end of the year, as we sit today, we're projecting 1.5 short in revenues, 1.6 short in revenues.
On the core services category, and maybe I just have been behind and need to be caught up, what does that entail?
Core services are going to be administration, property, training. Those are all the areas that, let's just say, hypothetically, law enforcement was completely gone. Those would still be required, would still be in place at their current levels to maintain operations of the detention center.
They're listed at the bottom of the sheet you passed out.
Yes, on the bottom left corner of the second page, you'll see a list of core services.
Most of the staff down in the basement, that may not have been in that projection for detention initially.
Correct. So, So, Mr. Sullivan, where I think you might be going with this, hold on, I'm trying to run some quick numbers. If you look at just core services and detention, you're looking at approximately $35.6 million to, if you're doing the same thing I'm doing, $36 million for services that are essentially required to operate the detention center. If you then back out the general fund budget today of 34.2, that leaves you with approximately 1.4 million that general fund does not cover for the operation of that. So that's one way of looking at it as well, which is, again, extremely close to what we're showing as being short. So you can slice this pie however way you want. But at the end of the day, that's what we're going to be asking for. And we've made cuts in all of these areas. We've made cuts in core service areas, we've made cuts in detention areas, we've made significant cuts in the law enforcement areas. Law enforcement areas, and the sheriff can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've made more cuts there, percentage-wise, than we have anywhere else in our agency. And so, I would ask that you all strongly consider staying behind your initial recommendation when we did this and we vetted all these back in March, April, and May on the budget process. Don't set us back trying to get to the objectives that you all want.
I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. I don't know what the hesitancy is to fund law enforcement services, but that appears to be where the hesitancy is. While this county is growing significantly, the 150 square miles of unincorporated area, this Planning Commission and this VOCC approves addition after addition with 300, 400 houses, bringing in population increases all the time. And yet during that same period of time, our patrol numbers have gone from 53 to 30. We have cut our patrol force almost in half, while the population has spiked. That's the safety of your citizens, our citizens, that we are not taking into consideration. We have cut in our training, we have cut courthouse security, we have cut courtroom security, we have increased one in transportation. Actually, we used to have 6 and we now have 5. It was 4, but we added one back. We have cut at the jail, we have cut in judicial services, we've cut in communications that we provide for 9 area police and fire departments. We have cut in every area of operation. During that same period of time, we have lost over $5 million in special revenue funds. The latest being the $2.3 million that was lost as a result of the VOCC not renewing the contract with DOC. Something we had no input in or control of. This VET recommended that we add $2.1 million to our budget to cover that loss. And it was on the agenda for the new budget. And at that time, Butch said, let's give them $500,000 now, and then we'll promise you we'll give you the 1.6 in September. And that's on record, it's on tape. But when September got here, we never got the 1.6. So if we don't get the 1.6, then we've got another round of cuts to go. And that'll cut more out of patrol, it'll eliminate courthouse security. We've got to have the money to operate. This money is for paying people's salaries, period. It's not for buying any new cars, it's not for building any remodeling of any building or putting in new carpeting. It's for paying salaries. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
If you look at core services and just detention, general fund comes up short of about almost $1.4 million of funding both those areas which are imperative of operating the detention center. And that was the goal of Budget Board when they made their motion. PET recommended the revenue loss from DOC when we did our budget. So again, I'm asking you to stand behind what Budget Board was wanting to do, stand behind what BET recommended, and approve. And I will make a motion for the 165, but I'd be willing to see what you all have to say.
John, I think one of my concerns, and I can appreciate your revenue loss, I really can, and unfortunately you can't control that. And just the way our funding is now, your only fallback is general fund, but it keeps, growing every year. So at one point in time, something has to be done.
We have, as I said, we have been working towards our objective of operating the sheriff's office on the revenues of that fiscal year.
Right.
For the things that we have, and we're already expecting a loss next year, probably from one of our boarding agreements of probably somewhere in the tune of $250,000 or more.
Right.
And that's something that we now are already looking at preparing for next fiscal year.
As far as absorbing that loss or passing that loss to the general fund?
I believe our plan is to find ways of absorbing that loss. And I can't, if that's incorrect, the sheriff can correct me, but that's something that yes, the DOC contract was a very large, significant amount that we really had no control of, that we relied very heavily upon. We've had other contract losses and revenue losses this fiscal year that we have absorbed, that we have reduced our budgeted expenses for. And those are reflected in some additional revenue losses we see in special revenue, as well as in service fee. So we have reduced expenditures based on revenue so far this year. This one's a little bit different. Our goal is to operate the sheriff's office, I keep saying this, on the revenues that come in. Without adjusting for the DOC loss of revenue, that puts us back at square one of trying to do that. And I've worked so hard, and the sheriff's office has worked so hard, the sheriff has worked so hard to get us in line to do that. And I will do everything I can to make sure we stay under that. But unfortunately, this was kind of one of those very weird deals. And so I'm asking today that you all stand behind what you recommended as a BET to the budget board, and make a recommendation to budget board to approve additional funds for the DOC loss of revenue.
I think from the court clerk's office's standpoint, it's clear that to operate the jail and to pay the administrators to do that, there's certainly a difference there of $1.4 million. And you know, the difficulty for all of us is that the county budget only grows so much per year, and it seems like, and I'm not running any numbers, so I could be wrong about this, it seems like the sheriff's budget is growing faster than the county's budget, and so that's difficult for us to deal with. However, you've got people that have to be paid through the end of the year, and so I think a couple of things. From our standpoint, I think they need the money, and we would support that. But number two, I'd also like to, John, I'd like to work with Captain Skuda, not Sheriff Wetzel, but Sheriff Wetzel too, but I wouldn't refer to Sheriff Wetzel as first name. Anyway, we'd like to work with you guys on incarceration fees. You know, if we could get the judiciary to put the incarceration fees on the judgment and sentences, then it can come through our office for collections. We can refer that out to our collection agency if people aren't paying it. Things that we can do to help generate additional revenues for the sheriff's office.
We'd love to do that.
So that's where we're at. I mean, 1.4, 1.6, or excuse, is it? Yeah. You know, either way is fine.
If I could add just one more, just so you'll understand, in FY 13-14, our special revenue funds were $11.2 million. A year later, they were $8.8 million. We had lost $2.4 million in that 1 year, and that's when DOC pulled back up inmates. Then the following year, we were at 8.9, so we were still in there. But this year, we're down to 6.1 because of the cancellation of the contract by the OCC. So over the last, since 13-14, we have lost $5.1 million in money that we operated with every year. Since 13-14. It's almost impossible for any, I would ask your agency, why don't you take a 45% hit in revenue and operate your agency? And I wish everybody in here would look at that same question. We have statutory responsibility, we have constitutional responsibility that we can't make, that we can't fulfill because of this loss of revenue.
And I can say that on our one special revenue fund, on our revolving fund, because of some decisions that the administrative office, of course, the Supreme Court made, we did go from a balance, I don't know exactly, 600,000, 800,000, down to a balance of about 150,000 in a couple of year period because they were shifting costs. So our special revenue in our office did suffer more than the tune of 2/3 to for boards.
John,
But it's also hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars, and I recognize that.
okay, you had mentioned the $1.4 million is what it looks like you're gonna be short.
If you look
If you
at
just look
core
at
services
detention center
and
and core, right? Now, the budget board had, moved to add the 20 new DOs and the 3% pay raise. Is that $1.4 million? Is that indicative of those numbers as well?
it is not, because additional funding was not given for either of those. You had a pot of money that funded multiple areas. And so by saying that we're going to give you that money, you essentially taken it away from somewhere else. And so additional funds specific for those were not given.
Right. So in order to comply with what budget board is expecting to have 20 new DOs and a 3%, you actually need more than 1.4 million.
If that's the objective, yes. But
Now, I understand
For
where
argument's
you're coming.
sake,
I'm just saying that if somebody says something later, well, you only needed 1.4, and why didn't this get taken care of? I just want to put that out there, that wouldn't cover your entire.
based on the 660 that we initially budgeted, did not include the additional 20 or the 3%. We're struggling now just to maintain the 660, and so that's trying to add additional 20 while we would love to be able to do so, and especially if we had the funding to do so, we would make every attempt we could to get there. But no, this 1.4 does not take into consideration those two, and the 33 that's here does not take into consideration that number either. That 33.4 is based on the current salary levels, current pay levels, and the 660 employees throughout the agency.
Do we have any kind of an issue, you're asking for 165, but we only have 16 on the watch list? We can recommend whatever, correct?
Because the recommendation states the 1.6 doesn't have to match the BET watch list necessarily.
Yeah, the agenda has 1.65, so.
If it was 165, that would allow 10 additional DOs to try and be hired for the next 6 months. If that adds some numbers for you at all.
Does that then create a $500,000 need for next year if you hire 10 additional for the next 6 months?
I think we'd look at, again, it goes down to trying to be able to hire out. That was more from a dollar perspective. That's about what 10 would cost
For half a year.
Yeah. But the sheriff knows, and all of you guys know, attrition's hot, extremely hot. The hiring process is extremely difficult. So today, let's focus on this fiscal year. Let us get through this year. And if we need to look at staffing levels and specifically, I think that's something we can look at as a BET when we look at budget, as we start the budget process here pretty soon. But I'd like to try and get this addressed and be more than happy to look at the personnel numbers with you all when we start the budget process for next fiscal year.
And you may have already thrown this number out there, but you're projecting 45.6 million total expenses for this year. Do you have a number of total expenses for last year?
I didn't bring those with me. I was focused on this and dealing with everything else that you and I have been working on it. So.
Johnny made a motion, I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
I have one question. I'm just looking at, this is for law enforcement or it's for detention?
This would go towards operating the detention center.
Yeah, on page 2 of your presentation here,
Of which document?
the document that you provided to us, you got 1161 jail. Is fund restricted, if so, provide statute? Yes, it's restricted. Can it be used for this need? No.
That is
I'm kind of confused about that.
That is one of those very weird statutory restrictions on that account. That the funds that are in that account are minimal for one, but also can only be used for the storage of property, or is it paying for the storage of property on, that being held for people and they get it back? So there's really, we're working on statutory changes to that, the legislature, to get that addressed so that can be used for jail operations. As it is today, that specific revenue stream cannot be used really for anything that we currently do as an agency.
And on the total budget this year, you're talking about 45.6. You don't have, is it $1 million, is it $4 million, is it $2 million more than last year for total revenue? Do you have any ballpark when we get into the pretend?
Total revenue would be a little bit, I'd have to go back and pull, I didn't look at last year's revenue numbers overall, but as far as special revenue, I know for a fact is less. Service fee is a little bit less, if not right on par.
And the $33.4 million that was appropriated for the detention center operation, and I'm sure there's a lot of people around the budget board who thought you were going to get some money for hiring some new DOs and giving them a raise, and that apparently didn't happen?
They thought we were going to get money for it, which we never did. That's the misconception.
And for the end of this month, and for the end of the next 4 or 5 months, when will you not be able to make payroll?
You're looking at June, but we have to know now whether or not the money is going to be there, because of the changes. We can't wait until June to make staffing changes. We can't wait until June to determine where else we need to look. We need to know now if we're going to have the 1.4, the 1.6, however you choose to look at it, for the next 6 months.
So you're saying if you don't get that money, you will have to lay off people?
Yes.
Now?
Yes. We can't wait till June.
Even though you got...
If we waited till June, we'd have to pretty much lay off every single person in our agency to make June payroll. And then we wouldn't be operating the detention center.
So you're thinking if layoffs would have to occur, it would be layoffs in the detention center?
Everywhere. The detention center would not be left out.
I think what John's saying is that earlier they started making layoffs, the fewer number of employees they'd have to lay off because it'd be a fewer number over a longer period of time.
And we can let attrition do some of that as well. I will look at every single one of you and tell you I will do everything I can now, as I have been, and moving forward, to ensure that the Sheriff's Office meets our goal of operating on the revenues that we have, the revenues that we bring in on service fee and special revenue. We will do that to the best of our abilities now and moving forward. As I spoke to all of you guys individually, you all know that's what I've been working on, that's what I've been doing. I will continue to do that. And I will continue the transparency that we have kept on our agency.
Any further discussion? Randy, this is perfect time. All right, if there's no further discussion, do we have a motion on the table?
Yes.
Did you make a motion? I thought you did.
And Christie second.
So we got a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Roll call vote. Christie?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Danny?
No.
Larry?
No.
Amy?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you sure you're a yes?
Yes, I'm sure I'm a yes.
Okay, I'm a yes. So it was 1,
4 to
2, 3, 4 to 3.
4 to 3.
Okay. Will be a recommendation, a 4 to 3 recommendation. When I address the budget board, I will make sure that they're aware that it was 4 to 3. We're short a member. Potentially, if we were fully staffed, it could be a deadlock, so. Okay, wait, just to be clear, your recommendation was for the full 1.65, so I just want to make sure that Matthew got that. All right, item number 9, discussion and possible action to place on BET watch list a transfer of $31,500 to the Sheriff's Office General Fund from the General Fund Reserve. This amount, the estimated amount for operating a temporary kitchen.
Cody asked me just to place this on there for your all's, benefit. If budget board approves the 165, I'll be taking this off of this watch list. I'll find a way to make that 31.5 work. But for right now, I'd like to make a motion to put this on the watch list. This is just for 1 month.
And
For a
did it start
temporary kitchen.
operating the temporary kitchen?
Not to my knowledge yet.
It's when this mold project, that's what start, right?
But we'll be needing to move them out as soon as possible.
Yeah, in the infrastructure committee discussions, there was discussion about additional funding needed for that. So I told John that if they didn't have money, they were needing additional funds to be sure and put that on here. If we can't get it, if it doesn't get approved, budget board, the former item doesn't get approved, and then you do wind up asking for this, I think that we want probably instead of a month-to-month, more of an approximation.
Right, but we don't know.
Sure.
Right now, we don't know the timeline of that project either.
Right.
So that's why, for the initial, I just put on 1 month, so we know we can multiply that out however long we need to get a total. I'll make a motion to add this to the watch list.
All right, we've got a motion to add $31,500 to the watch list to cover the increased amount necessary for operating a temporary kitchen at the Oklahoma County Jail.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll get that added. Item number 10, discussion on possible action to place on the BET watch list arbitrage of $25,000 in general government.
We have 2 bond issues coming up for arbitrage. It is our GL limited tax refunding bonds of 2012 and our OIA revenue refunding bonds of 2012. Arbitrage calculation of these have always been out of general government. I just didn't get them in there when we did the budget in the spring. That's an estimate too. We haven't even really contacted a service provider or gotten quotes, so I just wanted to get it on there.
Motion to approve.
So we're making a second, okay. We have a motion and a second to add to the BET watch list $25,000 for arbitrage. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, ayes have it. Item number 11, discussion and possible action about processes and procedures for fiscal year 17-18 budget reviews and recommendations.
Where are we wanting to start this process? February? Or at least start looking at rough numbers? I know the estimate needs won't be due until March, but April. Well, we'll start getting the actual estimate needs documents. So if we start this budget process and we're looking at rough budgets that people can kind of include and be the first draft essentially of their estimate needs, is that something we should look at, or do we just wait until they start drafting their estimate needs before we start looking at actual budgets?
I think earlier is better. I mean, I think you did a good job last year. We just ran out of time.
And I prefer not to give up 2 straight weeks of nothing but meetings too.
Right.
What would preclude or prohibit or be an issue if we were to just push everything back a month? Like use February payroll, get needs, estimated needs out, maybe look at that?
Yeah.
So get the estimated needs in earlier, so you're not talking about a first draft, you're actually talking about the estimated needs. So I think that's what we would be in favor of.
Of course,
Are we-
who knows what changes the most.
Yeah, right, and I said,
But
are we restricted to using just 1 month's salary numbers for the estimate needs?
For your projections.
For the estimate needs document, or is there a restriction on that you have to use just 1 month?
Like we used in the March
Right.
numbers, I don't believe so.
That's just something that we've done internally to try and look at that.
I'll verify that.
Okay.
I don't believe there's a restriction.
Now, is that something that budget board would need to make, that determination that they wanted to speed that process up, or is that something that your office could?
I think it would be good, since it's a process change, it would probably
I
need to
agree.
go through the budget board. So it's-
I agree.
So it's documented.
And, Aaron, this is a pretty broad item, discussion and possible action about processes and procedures, about the budget reviews and recommendations. Could this board make a recommendation to budget board at their next meeting that we would like to move the estimate of needs up a month based on this particular agenda item?
Close one. I'll err on the side of allowing it.
Okay.
And again, we'll follow up with state auditors, see if there's a statutory requirement, or if the state auditor requirement to use March 31 numbers.
You know, about the March 31st, I've always thought it's kind of arbitrary, and
Right.
for us, we have to transfer people back and forth, and if we're in March, then we have to make adjustments and everything else. Why wouldn't we want to just use an average?
Yeah, look at, I mean, that's kind of where I was going, look at the entire fiscal year.
Because I know you
But
guys
I would
have...
think we would all need to do it the same way.
Oh,
So
sure.
we're all
Right.
project-
Sure.
yeah.
Well,
Right.
but it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? Just like
No, it's
last year.
not.
Well,
No, it's not.
let me tell you why I say that, Larry, before you don't let me speak. I would say, with ours last year, our March 31st number was a certain number, but we had 2 vacancies, and this board considered those 2 vacancies. And so, if it had been the average, and it was down 3 because of the average of the year, the board still would have considered the 3 vacancies. You know, this is how many, it's almost looking at, are you gonna budget on an FTE basis, or are you gonna budget on a snapshot? And really, we kind of do a hybrid. We budget on a snapshot, but we consider at the quote-unquote FTEs.
And that's fine for a budget where you're all general fund dollars, but we have special revenue funds from reval, and we have to move people from different funds that are restricted very severely. And that's our concern when we just pick a point in time, because we may have more people over in the reval account or less people over in the reval account, and it changes our budget outlook and the focus of what happens in our office. And I guess you guys have the same thing with highway cash, because you transfer back and forth. So there has to be, for those kinds of funds, I think there has to be some sort of accommodation for those different departments, and having some sort of an average would make a lot more sense for us.
Well, could that not be kind of, hating to split the baby, but kind of, I think what Mike's getting at is we could do that in the vetting process when we're going over the individual budgets, department by department, like what we did last year. Those departments that have special revenue accounts that they utilize heavily, that could be something that we go over with them on an individual case-by-case basis.
It just needs to be explained how each individual department budgets their people and the expense for their people.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, because it's completely different, like planning, you know, Tyler, I mean, we made the decision last year to just move them completely out of their special rev, and they're not general fund at all, and then we've got some that are almost all general fund and no special rev, and then you got a bunch that are in the middle. We're all a little bit different. I think that was really what was nice in our process last year, was actually looking at each department individually and trying to tailor our recommendations to the needs of that particular department, and not basing it on the needs of another department.
And those estimate needs forms, they are just a format, that's the minimum that you're required to report. I would encourage all departments to provide more detail for their projections, you know, kind of like what John handed out today. You have that right, but you have to fill out the estimate needs form.
Well, and what Larry's getting at, what we may want to do at our next, I mean, we can do it now, or at our next BET, we could think between now and our next BET meeting, is those departments that utilize special revenue funds extensively, what kind of things are we gonna want from them, what kind of answers, i.e. averages, that kind of stuff. We could start coming up with that, that way we could send out notification to departments to expect this line of questioning and to be able to answer these types of questions. I mean, I think that's a fair approach.
Do you have on a calendar, you get steps, obviously, that go through the process. Do you envision laying out a calendar, much like the legislature does with, you have to have your bills introduced by this date, and you have to have them through committee by this date? I mean, all the steps that go to our process, do you envision having a calendar laid out, or do you just envision doing the best we can to get there by May, June, when we have to adopt the budget?
Clerk's office does a great
We do,
calendar.
yeah, we do have a calendar, but not for this particular.
Right, for this process.
I think we need to see that one, which we all kind of know, you gotta have it done for 30 days to protest, but see that, and then we can work our meetings, if that's what you're talking about, like our meeting stuff, work on that.
And Larry?
Yes,
I'm sorry for being snippy. My wife tells me that I suffer from prematurely thinning skin.
well, I think we're breaking up, that's all I know.
To answer your question, I think the more structured we can be, the better it will be. I think it'll allow for a more efficient and inclusive process, which should yield a better recommendation to the budget board for the fiscal year 17-18 general fund budget.
So the sooner we can get dates on meetings and stuff now, I know as we start into this process, you have a lot of spring vacationing, you have spring break for people, so there's a lot. I think it'd be helpful if we can start, maybe by our next meeting, get a draft of some dates that we can at least discuss for this process.
Well, I think if we're wanting to move the estimate of needs up a month and utilize the end of February instead of the end of March, I think that would be appropriate to do now, to make that recommendation. That way, at least we know at our next BET meeting that whether Budget Board has signed off on that recommendation or they haven't signed off on that recommendation, so we can, or the clerk's office could then adjust their calendar that they do, and then we can really start working on our calendar.
I think once Budget Board makes a determination one way or the other, I think you as the chairman, we call a special meeting before our February meeting, because if we make that determination in February, we're going to probably only be a week or so away from wanting to start some of those meetings. So the sooner we can set those, the better.
If you make the February cutoff, it takes a good 10 business days to probably get out information. You need to give every department there a couple weeks to do their forms. So for us to get the information back, you're probably looking at late March anyway. But again, it'd still be a whole month earlier than what we dealt with last year. Does that sound about right? As far as
I agree.
So we'd be meeting in March as opposed to.
we would close out February, so to speak. Close out, get through February payroll, estimates come out, you give them so much time.
But
So
the
we'd be
department's
looking
going to be working on other expenses
True.
with the exception of payrolls,
Right.
if that's going to be the methodology. But there's a lot more you can be working on in the meantime as well.
Well, and if we do determine when the estimate of needs is going to be turned in, then in between now and say we do move it to the end of February, if we can't really start doing anything until March, we can still do stuff. We just can't, do department interviews and that kind of stuff. But we can look at a schedule, setting a schedule for this group. We can start looking at what types of questions, what types of information we're going to want departments to have available beyond just the estimate of needs packet that traditionally they have provided, that kind of stuff. Kind of learning off of our process that was kind of, adjusted on the fly last year, so.
People being busy.
Yeah, but it'll be better than May and June.
Sure would.
All right, do we have a motion to make a recommendation to the budget board of moving our calendar up a month as it relates to when the estimate of needs are due?
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to make a recommendation to the budget board. The estimate of needs will be based upon the February payroll numbers, or the February numbers instead of March.
I would word it to where, that we just move the estimate of needs to February, and that will give Danny a week to determine whether or not, or he'll have the next couple of days before we post actual something to the agenda, so you can maybe modify it to include, if it has to be February payroll, or if we're not restricted as to what we use to calculate payroll and personnel numbers. I'd make the motion that the budget board, that we move the entire budget process up
1 month.
1 month.
And it won't be the end of February anyway, since last year we moved that pay date to the 20th, so we get that extra few days in February, normally 10 days, but get that extra time, so we may be able to get to it a little bit
But it
earlier.
won't post until the end of the month.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Process payroll, right, in February.
That's
I thought you had something. I'm right there with you. You're right.
All right, so there's a motion, and is there a second? Was there a second? A motion and a second to make a recommendation to move the budget calendar up 1 month this year from what it has traditionally been. Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, finally we got something done on the recurring agenda item number 11. Wow. It's like my baby.
It was time,
I
yeah.
know. I know. Thank you, guys. I can die a happy man. All right, item number 12, discussion and possible action to receive an update on employee benefits. Danny, you had discussed a lot of this in the previous agenda item. Is there anything else you have to add?
Usually I go over the monthly financial report. I don't have that. I don't have the treasurer's numbers to reconcile to yet, so I don't have that information. So nothing else to add from what I already discussed.
Okay, is there a motion to receive Danny's non-existent report?
make a motion to receive nothing.
It is our fault. We have not closed out
I'm just
December.
giving him a hard time.
Well, it's not even him. We're still closing out.
No, you gave us good information earlier, which
Yeah.
is extremely important. So there's no action needed on that item. All right, item number 13, discussion and possible action regarding any item currently on the BET watch list. I did notice the watch list that was attached was an old watch list, unless what I'm pulling up is wrong. What I'm showing to be attached was the watch list dated 12/13/16, which does not have the defined benefit retirement system pulled off of it. Because remember, in December, on the 16th, we had made the recommendation, well, the budget board approved funding $400,000 for that.
I'm sorry.
Is anybody, did I pull something up that was
No, you're
not
correct.
correct?
No, you're correct.
That's what's attached. I thought the day of budget board, I
You
had
did,
updated.
and I've got it, so if anybody wants
I
to see
must have
it.
attached the wrong one.
Yeah, I don't think, because really we could,
What was the question?
well, our agenda item to discuss the current watch list, we have a current watch list, but the one that's attached is not the current watch list. So can we only discuss the one that's attached?
Correct.
Okay, the one that's attached is correct, except for just a couple of adjustments. We had the defined retirement benefit, or defined benefit retirement system, easy for me to say, of $200,000. That has been funded by budget board to the tune of $400,000. That was last month, so that is actually currently removed, but it's on this one here. We have employee benefits of $1 million that is on here. We had a discussion earlier and a motion to change that to $2 million. So is there any further discussion on that particular item? I think that was beat to death earlier. And then the sheriff's remaining DOC contract of $1.6 million. There was a recommendation from this body of funding $1.65 million. So both of those two items were discussed previously on this agenda. There's nothing else on the old one. The new one, there wasn't anything different either, so. It's really no big deal, but. No more discussion on either of those two items? Okay, Christie, will you update the watch list based upon the items that were added today?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. All right. No action needed on item 13. Item 14, new business. Is there any new business to be heard? All right, seeing none. Citizens' participation? Seeing none. Under citizen participation, Randy, would you like to?
Oh, sure. As well as Citizen Randy Raw, it's great to be back and look forward to working with this group.
Board comments. Christie?
None?
No thanks.
Nothing?
Larry? Amy?
No.
John?
No, thank you.
Okay, I look forward to spending time with you whenever you're part of us. Guys,
May not get approved.
Yeah, I know.
there's going to be a filibuster.
Tell your public officials to vote against me that beach.
All right, guys, I look forward to the next few months of really rolling our sleeves up and getting into this. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.